The November wind cut through Maria's worn coat as she locked the back door of the Sterling Grill for what she thought would be just another night. 28 years old, with tired eyes but a warm smile, she'd been managing the upscale restaurant for 3 years. Unlike the wealthy patrons who dined on $200 steaks inside, Maria knew what it meant to go hungry. "Excuse me, ma'am?" The voice was barely above a whisper. Maria turned to see a man huddled against the dumpster enclosure. His clothes were layers of mismatched donations, his beard unkempt, but it was the way he held himself, shoulders squared despite the cold, that caught her attention. Even in the dim light, she could see the faded eagle, globe, and anchor tattoo on his forearm when his sleeve rode up. "I'm not looking for money," he said quickly, raising his hands. I saw you throwing out those containers. If there's anything still good in there, I haven't eaten since yesterday morning." Maria's heart clenched. She glanced at the security camera, then at the 4 aluminum containers she'd just tossed. Tonight's leftover prime rib, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, and fresh rolls. Perfectly good food that corporate policy demanded be destroyed rather than donated. "What's your name?" she asked softly. "Marcus. Marcus Thompson, ma'am. 1st Battalion, 9th Marines." He straightened slightly, muscle memory from years of service. "Where did you serve, Marcus?" 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq." His voice grew distant. "Came home 5 years ago to nothing. Wife left while I was deployed. Couldn't hold a job with the nightmares. Been on the streets for 2 years now." Maria bit her lip. She'd grown up in a military family. Her brother was Army, her father Navy before he passed. She knew the statistics. 22 veterans dying by suicide daily, thousands homeless. But statistics were different when they had a face, a name, and were shivering 6 feet away from her. "Wait here," she said, making a decision that would change everything. She unlocked the door and hurried to the kitchen, her heart pounding. The Sterling Grill threw away enough food each night to feed dozens of people, all because of liability concerns and brand image. She grabbed fresh containers and began filling them properly, not garbage, but a meal served with dignity. "Maria, what are you doing?" She spun around to find Derek, the night supervisor, standing in the doorway. His eyes narrowed as he took in the scene. The to-go containers, the open back door, and Marcus visible in the alley. "Just cleaning up," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Don't lie to me. I saw you on the security monitor. You're giving food to that vagrant." "He's not a vagrant. He's a veteran who's hungry." Derek pulled out his phone. "You know the policy. Mr. Hartwell was very clear. Any employee caught giving away food is terminated immediately. No exceptions. Derek, please. It's food we're throwing away anyway. Policy is policy." He was already dialing. "Mr. Hartwell?" "Yes, sir. I'm sorry to call so late. We have a situation at the Sterling location on 5th Street. Maria's stomach dropped as she listened to Derek explain the situation in the most damning terms possible. She could hear Mr. Hartwell's response even from across the kitchen. The regional manager was furious. "He wants to speak with you." Derek held out the phone with a smirk. "Maria Santos?" Hartwell's voice was ice cold. "Is it true you were stealing food to give to some homeless person?" "I wasn't stealing, sir. It was leftover food designated for disposal, which remains company property until it's in the dumpster. You've been with us 3 years. You know the rules. Mr. Hartwell, he's a veteran. He served 3 tours. I don't care if he's the president. You're terminated, effective immediately. Clean out your locker and leave your keys with Derek. Your final check will be mailed." The line went dead. Maria handed the phone back to Derek, her hands shaking. 3 years of perfect reviews, of covering extra shifts, of treating every customer like royalty gone. Her rent was due next week. Her mother's medication cost $400 a month. But as she looked through the door at Marcus, still waiting hopefully in the cold, she knew she'd make the same choice again. "I'll need your keys, name tag, and corporate card," Derek said, clearly enjoying his moment of power. Maria silently handed over the items that had defined her professional life. As she gathered her personal belongings from the small manager's office, a photo of her family, her coffee mug, 3 years of thank you cards from staff, she heard Derek on the phone again. "Yes, I'll need a patrol car at the Sterling Grill. We have a trespassing situation." "You're calling the police on Marcus?" Maria whirled around. "He's not doing anything wrong. He's loitering on private property. Company policy." Maria grabbed the containers of food she'd prepared and stormed past Derek. Outside, Marcus was starting to back away, having sensed trouble. "Ma'am, I didn't mean to cause problems." "You didn't." She thrust the containers into his hands. "This is dinner and tomorrow's breakfast. There's a veterans shelter on Riverside Drive. Ask for Patricia. Tell her Maria sent you. But your job was just a job." She forced a smile. "You risked your life for our country. The least I can do is risk a paycheck to make sure you eat tonight." Tears formed in Marcus's weathered eyes. I don't know what to say. Just promise me you'll go to the shelter. Patricia can help with VA benefits, maybe get you back on your feet." "Yes, ma'am. I promise." He clutched the food containers like precious cargo. "Thank you. I won't forget this." As sirens wailed in the distance, Maria watched Marcus disappear into the night. She looked back at the Sterling grill one last time, at the discarded food in the dumpster, at Derek watching smugly from the doorway, at the job that had been her stability and her cage. Her phone buzzed. 3 texts in quick succession. "Maria, what happened?" "Derek said you were fired. From Sophie, a server." "Is it true?" "You got terminated for feeding someone." From James, the head chef. "This is bullshit. We're not going to let this stand." From Antoine, the bartender. But Maria didn't have the energy to respond. She walked to her 10-year-old Honda Civic, slumped into the driver's seat, and finally let the tears fall. How would she explain this to her mother? How would she pay for those medications? What reference would she get after being fired for theft? She didn't notice the young woman in the parking lot who had filmed the entire exchange on her phone. She didn't see that woman post the video to social media with the caption, "Manager at the Sterling Grill just got fired for feeding a homeless veteran with food that was being thrown away. This is what's wrong with corporate America." And she certainly didn't know that the woman's father happened to be Thomas Sterling, founder and CEO of Sterling Restaurant Group, who was about to see his company portrayed in a very different light than the luxury brand he'd spent 30 years building. Maria drove home in silence, unaware that her act of kindness had been captured, uploaded, and was already spreading across the internet like wildfire. Within an hour, the video had been shared thousands of times. Veterans groups picked it up. Food waste activists amplified it. Local news stations started calling the Sterling Grill for comment. By the time Maria reached her small apartment, her phone was dying from the constant notifications she hadn't noticed. She plugged it in and collapsed on her couch, still wearing her manager's blazer, trying to figure out how she'd make ends meet. She thought about Marcus, hoping he'd made it to the shelter, hoping the food was still warm, hoping that small act of kindness might be the thing that helped him turn his life around. It had cost her everything, but somehow she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Probably a telemarketer, but she answered anyway. "Miss Santos? This is Patricia from Riverside Veterans Shelter. A gentleman named Marcus just arrived. He told me what you did. I wanted to thank you personally. Do you know how rare it is for someone to sacrifice their job for one of our veterans? Is he okay? He's safe, fed, and we've already started his paperwork for services. Miss Santos, what you did tonight, it matters more than you know." Maria ended the call and closed her eyes. Maybe she'd lost her job, but Marcus had a warm meal and a safe place to sleep. In the grand scheme of things, that had to count for something. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her landlord. "Maria, I saw the video. Don't worry about rent this month. Anyone who'd do what you did is someone I'm proud to have as a tenant. We'll figure it out." "Video? What video?" Before she could process this, her phone rang again. And again. And again. 2 hours. That's all the time that passed between Maria getting fired and the black fleet of SUVs pulling up to her apartment building. She'd spent those 2 hours in a daze, fielding calls from reporters, trying to understand how a video of her firing had gone viral, and writing a budget that made her stomach churn. Without her job, she had maybe 3 weeks before things got desperate. The knock at her door was firm but not aggressive. Maria peered through the peephole to see a woman in an expensive suit flanked by what looked like security personnel. "Miss Santos? I'm Linda Watson, Chief of Staff for Thomas Sterling. May we come in?" Maria's mind raced. Thomas Sterling, the Thomas Sterling? The billionaire founder of Sterling Restaurant Group owned over 200 high-end restaurants nationwide. Why was his chief of staff at her door at 11 p.m.? She opened the door cautiously. "Is this about getting my final paycheck?" "Because Mr. Hartwell said." "Mr. Hartwell is no longer with the company as of 45 minutes ago," Linda said crisply. "May we come in?" Mr. Sterling would like to speak with you personally. Maria stepped aside, too shocked to refuse. Linda entered, followed by two security personnel who remained by the door. Then, to Maria's complete amazement, Thomas Sterling himself walked into her modest apartment. He wasn't what she expected. Instead of the polished corporate titan from magazine covers, he looked tired, upset, and somehow vulnerable. He was still in pajamas under an expensive overcoat, as if he'd left home in a hurry. "Miss Santos," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I owe you an apology. But first, I need to tell you a story." He sat on her second-hand couch without invitation, running his hands through his gray hair. 45 years ago, I came back from Vietnam. I was 22, angry, lost. No one was hiring vets back then. We were baby killers, remember? I lived on the streets for 8 months. Maria sank into the chair across from him, speechless. One night, I was behind a restaurant in Chicago, digging through their dumpster. The owner caught me. Instead of calling the cops, she invited me in, fed me, and offered me a job washing dishes. Her name was Rose Patterson. That job, that act of kindness, saved my life. His eyes glistened. I worked my way up from dishwasher to cook to manager. When Rose retired, she sold me the restaurant for $1. I built Sterling Restaurant Group to honor her legacy, or so I thought. Until tonight, when I saw that video. Mr. Sterling, I watched you get fired for doing exactly what Rose did for me. I watched my regional manager, who I personally promoted, call the police on a veteran for the crime of being hungry. And I realized I've built a company that Rose would be ashamed of. He pulled out his phone and showed her the video. Maria watched herself standing up to Derek, heard her own words defending Marcus, saw the moment she handed over the food containers despite knowing it would cost her everything. 2 million views in 2 hours, he said quietly. Do you know what the comments say? They say Sterling Restaurant Group cares more about throwing away food than feeding veterans. They say we're everything wrong with corporate America. And they're right. Sir, I didn't mean for this to. No. He held up a hand. You did exactly what you should have done. What any decent human being should do. The fact that my policies prevented that, punished that, that's on me. Linda stepped forward. Mr. Sterling would like to offer you a position. I appreciate that, but I don't want my job back if Derek is still. Derek has been terminated, Linda said, as has Mr. Hartwell and 3 other regional managers who enforced similar actions at other locations. But that's not the position Mr. Sterling wants to offer you. Thomas Sterling leaned forward. I'm creating a new position, Vice President of Community Outreach and Veteran Affairs. You'll oversee a complete overhaul of our food waste policies, establish partnerships with veteran organizations and food banks, and ensure that no Sterling restaurant ever turns away a hungry veteran again. Maria's mouth fell open. Vice President? Mr. Sterling, I don't have experience. You have something more valuable than experience. You have integrity. You have courage. And you understand what really matters. He pulled out a contract. The salary is $150,000 a year to start, full benefits, company car. But more importantly, you'll have the authority and budget to make real change. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Help me fix what I've broken. Help me build the company Rose Patterson would have wanted. Maria thought about Marcus, about all the food thrown away nightly, about the thousands of veterans who went hungry while restaurants tossed perfectly good meals. What about Marcus? The veteran from tonight? Sterling smiled, the first genuine smile since he'd arrived. Linda pulled out a tablet. Marcus Thompson has been located at Riverside Shelter. We've arranged for transitional housing, job training through our culinary program, and full medical benefits while he gets back on his feet. He starts Monday as a prep cook at our downtown location, with a path to advancement based on his performance. You already did all that? You stood up for him when it cost you everything, Sterling said. The least we can do is make sure your sacrifice meant something. Maria felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Yes. My answer is yes. Sterling stood and extended his hand. Welcome to the executive team, Miss Santos. Can you start tomorrow? We have 200 restaurants to transform and a lot of veterans to feed. As they shook hands, Linda's phone rang. She listened for a moment, then smiled. Sir, that was Fox News. They want to interview you and Miss Santos about the new veteran initiative. CNN and MSNBC have also called. The video now has 5 million views. Schedule them all, Sterling said. I want the world to know that Sterling Restaurant Group stands with our veterans. and that we have Maria Santos to thank for reminding us who we're supposed to be. The next morning, Maria stood in the executive conference room at Sterling Corporate Headquarters, addressing 50 regional managers via video conference. She wore a new suit Linda had somehow procured overnight, but more importantly, she wore the confidence of someone who knew she was doing right. Effective immediately, she announced, all Sterling restaurants will partner with local veteran organizations and food banks. Leftover food will be properly stored and donated. Any employee who facilitates feeding a veteran in need will receive a commendation, not a termination. The managers nodded, some enthusiastically, others clearly uncomfortable with the change. Maria didn't care about the latter group. They'd adapt or they'd be replaced. Furthermore, she continued, each location will reserve 2 tables every night for veterans who can't afford a meal. They'll eat the same food as our paying customers, with the same dignity and respect. This isn't charity, it's gratitude for their service. After the meeting, she found Thomas Sterling on the roof garden of the corporate building, staring out at the city. Rose would have been proud today, he said without turning around. How long ago did she pass? 20 years next month. I spoke at her funeral, promised I'd never forget where I came from. But I did forget, didn't I? Got so focused on profit margins and liability concerns that I forgot about people. You remembered when it mattered, Maria said gently. No, you reminded me. And Marcus reminded you. That's how it works. We lift each other up. He turned to face her. I'm announcing my retirement next year. I'll stay on as chairman, but I want someone younger, someone with fresh ideas to take over as CEO. Sir, I'm sure you have many qualified. I want it to be you. He held up a hand before she could protest. Not immediately. You'll need a few years to learn the business side, work with the board, understand the complexities. But Maria, you have something that can't be taught. You understand that a business is only as good as its values. Maria thought about the strange journey that had brought her here, from managing a single restaurant to potentially running a corporation, all because she'd chosen to feed a hungry veteran. Can I bring Marcus to the press conference this afternoon? She asked. Sterling smiled. I already sent a car for him. He'll be there, along with Patricia from the shelter and 5 other veterans whose lives have been changed by the programs you're implementing. This isn't just about fixing our mistake. It's about showing what's possible when businesses remember their humanity. That afternoon, the press conference went viral for all the right reasons. Marcus, clean-shaven and wearing a borrowed suit, stood beside Maria as she announced the Sterling Veterans Initiative. He spoke eloquently about his service, his struggles, and how one person's kindness had changed everything. Maria Santos lost her job for feeding me, he said, his voice strong and clear. But she didn't just give me food, she gave me hope. She reminded me that I mattered. That's what this initiative is about. Not charity, but recognition that veterans deserve better than hunger and homelessness. Within a week, other restaurant chains announced similar programs. Within a month, Sterling's stock price had risen 15% as consumers rewarded the company's newfound values. Within a year, the Sterling Veterans Initiative had provided over 100,000 meals and helped transition 500 veterans from homelessness to employment. But for Maria, the real victory came in small moments. Like when Marcus graduated from prep cook to line chef, then to kitchen manager. Like when other veterans stopped by just to shake her hand and say thank you. Like when Thomas Sterling officially announced her as his successor, saying, "She taught an old Marine that the mission never ends, it just changes." 5 years later, as CEO Maria Santos rang the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, she thought about that cold November night when she'd made a choice between policy and principle. Beside her stood Marcus Thompson, now a regional manager overseeing veteran employment programs, and Thomas Sterling, the chairman who'd learned that true leadership sometimes means admitting you've lost your way. On her desk that morning was a simple note. Thank you for reminding us that courage isn't just for battlefields. A grateful veteran. She kept that note in her wallet, next to a photo of Rose Patterson that Thomas had given her. A reminder that one act of kindness could ripple through decades, touching lives in ways you'd never imagine. The Sterling Restaurant Group was now studied in business schools, not for its profit margins, but for its values-driven transformation. And it all started with a manager who refused to let a veteran go hungry, even when it cost her everything. Because sometimes losing everything is how you find out what really matters. And sometimes, the end of one story is just the beginning of a much bigger one. As Maria liked to say in her speeches, we don't just serve food. We serve hope. We serve dignity. We serve those who served us. And that's a mission worth fighting for. The sign in every Sterling restaurant now read, "Veterans eat free." Because freedom isn't. And in the corporate lobby, a bronze plaque bore a simple inscription. In honor of Maria Santos, who reminded us that principle is more valuable than profit, and Marcus Thompson, who showed us that every veteran deserves a second chance. And in memory of Rose Patterson, who started it all with a simple act of kindness. The ripples continued spreading, one meal, one veteran, one act of courage at a time. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.